The library was almost empty at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, just the way I preferred it. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny galaxies. I shelved returns in the fiction section, running my fingers along worn spines with the reverence I reserved for books and little else. This was my sanctuary, my escape from a world that had never quite made sense to me. Among these stacks, I could breathe. My name is Lily Chen, and at 27 years old, I had built a life of careful predictability. I worked as a librarian at the Riverside Public Library, lived alone in a modest apartment with my cat, and spent my evenings reading novels about lives more exciting than my own. It was a small life, a quiet life, but it was safe. After growing up in foster care, bouncing between homes that never quite felt like home, safety mattered more than adventure. The library doors opened with their familiar creak, and I glanced up from my cart of books. A group entered, 5 men in expensive suits that seemed out of place among the dusty shelves and worn furniture. They moved with a particular kind of confidence, the kind that comes from never being told no, the kind that makes other people nervous. I recognized the man at the center immediately. Everyone in this city knew Vincent Marchese, even if they pretended not to. He was in the newspapers constantly, photographed at charity galas and city council meetings. A businessman, they called him, a philanthropist. But the whispers told a different story. The Marchese family had run this city's underworld for 3 generations, and Vincent was the current king of that dark kingdom. He looked exactly like his photos, mid-50s, silver-streaked dark hair, a face that would have been handsome if not for the coldness in his eyes. He surveyed the library like he was assessing an acquisition, his gaze calculating and dismissive simultaneously. But it was not Vincent who captured my attention. It was the younger man walking slightly behind him, separated from the group by invisible barriers that everyone seemed to respect. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with dark hair that fell slightly into his eyes, as if he could not be bothered to push it back. While the others wore sharp suits, his was slightly rumpled, his tie loosened. And while they scanned the library with predatory interest, he looked at the books with something that resembled hunger. This had to be Marco Marchese, Vincent's son. I had heard about him, though the stories were sparse and contradictory. Some said he was being groomed to take over the family business. Others claimed he was the black sheep, too soft for the life he had been born into. What everyone agreed on was that he rarely spoke, kept to himself, and seemed to exist on the periphery of his father's dangerous world. I watched as Vincent spoke to someone on his phone, his voice loud and commanding. His associates flanked him, attentive and alert. And Marco drifted toward the classic literature section, his fingers trailing along the spines as mine had done moments before. No one followed him. No one even looked at him. He was invisible to them, a ghost in expensive clothes. Something about that invisibility resonated with me. I knew what it felt like to be in a room full of people and still be completely alone, to be overlooked, dismissed, treated as if you were not quite real. It was a particular kind of loneliness, one I had lived with my entire childhood. I should have minded my own business, should have returned to my shelving and let the Marchese family conduct whatever business had brought them to a public library. But I watched Marco pull out a worn copy of The Count of Monte Cristo, saw the way his expression softened as he opened to the first page, and I found myself walking toward him. "That is a good choice," I said quietly, not wanting to startle him. "One of the best revenge stories ever written." He looked up, surprise evident in his dark eyes. Up close, he was younger than I had first thought, perhaps 30 at most. His face was classically handsome, but marked by something that looked like exhaustion or resignation, and when he focused on me, really looked at me, I felt seen in a way I had not experienced in years. "You have read it?" His voice was soft, almost tentative, as if he was not used to being addressed directly, at least 5 times. I smiled. "I find something new in it every time. the way Dumas weaves together themes of justice and mercy, patience and vengeance. It is, I paused, trying to find the right words. It is about becoming someone new, while never forgetting who you were. That transformation fascinates me. Marco's expression shifted, something like recognition flickering across his features. Yes, exactly. Most people just see it as a revenge plot. They miss the deeper themes of identity and reinvention. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both of us holding the unspoken knowledge that we understood something about this book that others missed. In that silence, I heard Vincent's voice growing louder, more irritated. "Marco," Vincent called sharply. "We are leaving. Stop wasting time." I watched Marco's expression close off, the brief animation draining away to leave something flat and empty. He carefully returned the Count of Monte Cristo to the shelf, his hand lingering on the spine for just a moment. "It was nice to meet someone who actually reads," he said quietly, not quite meeting my eyes. "Not many people do anymore." "I am here most days," I offered before I could stop myself. "If you ever want to talk about books, or just read in peace." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something complicated in his gaze. Gratitude, maybe. Or warning. Or both. "Marco." Vincent's voice had taken on an edge. "Now." Marco nodded once to me and walked away, his posture shifting as he rejoined his father's orbit. The brief glimpse of the real person vanished, replaced by the invisible sun that everyone ignored. I watched them leave, feeling like I had just witnessed something significant, though I could not quite articulate what. My colleague Brenda appeared beside me, her eyes wide. "Did you just talk to Marco Marchesi?" "I did not know who he was when I started talking," I said honestly. "He was looking at one of my favorite books." Brenda gripped my arm. "Lily, do you have any idea who that family is? What they do? I have heard rumors." I started pushing my cart back toward the stacks, trying to project a calm I did not feel. "Rumors." Brenda lowered her voice even though the library was now empty again. "Vincent Marchesi runs half the illegal operations in this city. Gambling, protection rackets, God knows what else. His son is supposedly being trained to take over, though I have heard he does not have the stomach for it. People who cross that family end up missing, Lily. Missing." "He seemed nice," I said, which sounded absurd even as I said it. "A mobster's son. Nice." But there had been something genuine in Marco's eyes when we discussed literature, something human and hurt and hungry for connection. The encounter should have ended there, should have been a brief moment of connection that faded into memory. But 3 days later, Marco Marchesi returned to the library. He came alone this time, dressed more casually in dark jeans and a gray sweater that made him look younger, less intimidating. I was at the information desk when he entered, and I saw the exact moment he spotted me. His expression brightened almost imperceptibly, then closed off again, as if he had remembered he was not supposed to show emotion. He wandered the stacks for 20 minutes, pulling out books and reading their opening pages before returning them to the shelves. I tried to focus on my work, cataloging new acquisitions, but I found my attention drawn to him repeatedly. The way he moved through the library with such care, as if afraid of taking up too much space. The way he touched books like they were precious. The way no one else in the library gave him a second glance, not recognizing the infamous son of Vincent Marchesi, without his father's intimidating presence. Finally he approached the desk, a book in his hand. The Stranger by Camus. "Have you read this one?" he asked, his voice still soft, still tentative. "I have. It is bleak, but beautiful. Camus' exploration of absurdism, of finding meaning in a meaningless world." I met his eyes. "It is the kind of book that stays with you, changes how you see things. That is what I need." He set the book on the desk. something to change how I see things. I checked out the book to him, acutely aware that I was now handling his library card, seeing his full name and address printed in utilitarian black text. Marco Vincent Marchesi, an address in the most expensive part of the city. "Do you have recommendations?" he asked as I handed the book back. "For someone who needs books that offer different perspectives?" I considered the question, understanding that he was asking for something more than just reading suggestions. What kind of different perspectives? Philosophical, political, personal transformation, all of it. His answer was immediate. "Anything that shows me there are ways to live other than—" He stopped himself, clearly censoring. "Just other ways to be in the world." Over the next 30 minutes, I created a reading list for Marco Marchesi, books about choice and consequence, stories of people who had changed their paths, philosophy that questioned inherited wisdom. I wrote titles and authors in my neat librarian's hand, and Marco watched me write with an intensity that made me self-conscious. "Thank you," he said when I handed him the list. "This is... no one has ever..." He struggled with the words. "Thank you for treating me like a person instead of a name." "You are a person," I said simply. "Everyone is, underneath whatever labels they carry." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the careful mask he wore. "I should warn you. Being kind to me might not be wise. My family, my father, they complicate things for people in my life." "Then why keep coming back?" I asked, surprising myself with my directness. "Because you are the first person in years who has looked at me and seen something other than Vincent Marchesi's disappointing son." He picked up the book and the reading list. "Because in here, with these books, and you, I can almost remember who I wanted to be before I understood what I was expected to become." He left before I could respond, but his words stayed with me long after he was gone. That night, I researched the Marchesi family more thoroughly. The articles I found painted a picture of violence, corruption, and power. Vincent Marchesi was indeed the head of a criminal empire, one that had lasted 3 generations. Marco was mentioned occasionally, usually in contexts that questioned his fitness to inherit his father's role. Too intellectual, too soft, not ruthless enough. But I also found older articles, ones about Marco's mother, who had died when he was 12, a woman who had loved art and literature, who had tried to give her son a life beyond the family business. After her death, Marco had been shaped by his father's world, groomed for a role he apparently did not want but could not escape. I should have been frightened, should have recognized the danger of forming any kind of connection with someone from that world. But instead, I felt something else. Understanding, empathy, and yes, curiosity about the man who loved books and hated his inheritance. Marco came back to the library twice a week for the next month, always alone, always during the quieter afternoon hours. We fell into a pattern. He would browse, select books, and then spend 10 or 15 minutes talking with me about what he had read. Our conversations were never personal, always focused on literature and ideas. But through those discussions, I began to understand him. He was brilliant. His insights into themes and characters were sophisticated and nuanced. He could discuss existentialism and romanticism with equal facility, and he was hungry, desperately hungry, for intellectual engagement that had nothing to do with his father's business. It was 6 weeks after our first conversation when everything changed. I was alone in the library, working late to finish inventory. It was nearly 8 p.m., and the building was officially closed, but I had keys and permission to work after hours. I was shelving books in the back section when I heard the front door open. "Hello?" I called out, slightly nervous. "The library is closed." "I know." Marco's voice. "I saw your car in the parking lot. The light's on." He appeared at the end of the aisle, and I saw immediately that something was wrong. His face was bruised, his lips split. His hands shook slightly as he gripped a book. The Brothers Karamazov. I did not know where else to go. What happened? I moved toward him quickly. Are you okay? Should I call someone? No. Do not call anyone. He slumped against the bookshelf. My father and I had a disagreement about my future, about what he expects me to become. It got physical. I gently took the book from his hands and guided him to a chair in the reading area. Wait here. I retrieved the first aid kit from my office, my hands surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. When I returned, Marco was staring at nothing, his expression distant. I cleaned the cut on his lip carefully, acutely aware of how close we were, of the vulnerability in his eyes. He did not flinch, just watched me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Why do you stay? I asked quietly. If he hurts you, if you hate what he wants you to become, why not leave? And go where? Marco's laugh was bitter. I am a Marchese, Lily. That is not something you can just walk away from. My father, my family, they own me, have owned me since the day I was born. The only choice I have is how much I resist before I inevitably give in. That is not true. You always have a choice. Do I? He met my eyes. If I leave, I become a target for every enemy my father has made. If I stay and refuse to participate, I am a liability that might be eliminated. And if I do what he wants, if I become him, then I lose whatever is left of who I am. Those are not choices, Lily. That is just different versions of death. The despair in his voice broke something in me. I set aside the first aid supplies and took his hands in mine. They were cold, trembling slightly. Then find a fourth option, I said firmly. One you create for yourself, something that is not death in any form. If you are enjoying this story so far, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me create more content like this. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. Thank you. And now let us continue with Lily and Marco's journey. How? His question was barely a whisper. How do you create an option that does not exist? The same way the Count of Monte Cristo did. You become patient. You become strategic. You gather resources and allies. And when the moment is right, you transform into someone new while remembering who you were. Marco stared at me like I had just revealed something revolutionary. You really believe that is possible? For someone like me? I believe everyone deserves the chance to choose their own life. Even you. Especially you. He pulled his hands away, standing abruptly and moving to the window. The city lights spread below us, thousands of lives being lived in thousands of different ways. Why do you care? You do not know me, Lily. Do not know what I have done, what I have been complicit in, what I might still be forced to do. You should be running from me, not offering me hope. Maybe I see something in you that you have forgotten is there, I said, joining him at the window. Or maybe I know what it is like to feel trapped by circumstances you did not choose. To be invisible to people who should see you, to want something different so badly it hurts, but not know how to reach for it. He turned to face me fully. How did you escape? Your circumstances, whatever trapped you? I stopped waiting for someone to save me. I saved myself. It was not dramatic or heroic. I just made small choices every day that moved me toward the life I wanted. Got my GED. Worked multiple jobs to put myself through community college, applied for scholarships and grants, found this job, built a life that is mine, even if it is small and quiet. I met his eyes. You could do the same, Marco. It would be harder for you, more dangerous, but possible. You make it sound simple. It is not simple, but it is better than slowly dying in a life you hate. We stood in silence for several minutes, the space between us charged with possibilities neither of us was quite ready to name. Finally, Marco spoke. If I were to try, To find that fourth option, I would need help. Someone outside my family who I can trust. Someone who sees me as more than just Vincent Marchese's disappointing heir. I am not equipped to help you navigate your world, I said honestly. I am a librarian, Marco. I know books and cataloging systems. Not whatever your life involves. I do not need help with that world. I need help remembering there is another world. One with books and conversations and people who care about ideas more than power. He touched my hand gently. You have already been helping me, Lily. These past weeks talking with you, it has kept me sane, kept me human. That is more valuable than you realize. What are you asking me? To be my friend. His vulnerability was palpable. To keep talking to me about books. To remind me that I am more than what my father says I am. And maybe, if I can figure out how to actually leave, to not forget me when I am gone. I would never forget you, I said, and realized I meant it completely. Marco left shortly after, slipping out into the night like a shadow. I locked up the library and drove home, my mind spinning with the evening's revelations. I had just promised to help the son of a mob boss escape his life. It was insane, dangerous, and yet I could not bring myself to regret it. The next day, Brenda noticed my distraction immediately. You are different today. What happened? I made a friend, I said simply. She studied me. This would not happen to involve a certain frequent visitor who checks out existential philosophy and Russian literature. I do not want to talk about it. Lily. Her voice was serious. I like you. You are a good person. But if you are getting involved with Marco Marchese, you need to understand what that means. His family, they do not just hurt people who cross them, they destroy them, completely, and anyone connected to them becomes collateral damage. I am just talking to him about books, Brenda. Nothing more. For now, maybe. But these things never stay simple. She squeezed my hand. Just be careful. Please. Her warning echoed in my mind for the rest of the day. But when Marco appeared that afternoon, his face still showing bruises from the night before, carrying a book on existentialism and looking at me like I was the only solid thing in a shifting world, I knew I was already too far in to back out now. Over the following months, our relationship deepened from tentative friendship into something more profound. Marco came to the library almost daily, and our conversations expanded beyond books. He told me about his mother, how she had tried to protect him from his father's world, filling their home with art and literature and music, how her death had felt like losing his last defense against becoming a Marchese, how he had spent his teenage years trying to be what his father wanted while his soul slowly calcified. I told him about foster care, about being shuffled between families who saw me as a paycheck or a burden, about learning to be invisible because being seen meant being vulnerable, about finding refuge in books because fictional worlds were safer than real ones, about building a life of careful predictability because chaos had defined my childhood. We recognized ourselves in each other. Two people who had learned to be ghosts in their own lives. Two people desperate for connection but terrified of it. Two people trying to figure out how to be fully human when the world had taught them that being invisible was safer. It was during one of our longer conversations, sitting in the empty library after closing time, that Marco first articulated his plan. I have been thinking about what you said, about creating a fourth option. He was not looking at me, instead tracing patterns on the reading table with his finger. My father has properties all over the world, businesses that are legitimate fronts for illegal operations. What if I could separate them? Take the legitimate businesses and make them actually legitimate. Use them to build something outside his empire? That would take years, I pointed out, and significant resources. Could you even access those resources without your father knowing? Maybe. I have been learning the business despite hating it. I know where money flows, what properties could be liquidated, which operations could be isolated. He finally looked at me. It would require patience, strategy, building alliances with people my father does not control. But it might be possible. What would your father do if he found out? Kill me, probably. Marco's tone was matter of fact. Or find a way to neutralize me that does not involve actual death. But Lily, he leaned forward. If I do not try, if I just accept becoming him, that is already death. At least this way I would be choosing my own risk. How can I help? For the first time since I had met him, Marco smiled. A real smile that transformed his face from handsome to beautiful. You already are. Just keep being here. Keep talking to me. Keep reminding me why I am trying to be different. That is everything. But I wanted to do more. Over the next year, I became Marco's anchor to the world outside his family's influence. We met regularly, always at the library or other public spaces where his father's surveillance would not think to look. I helped him research legal structures for businesses, connected him with contacts I had from my community college days, people in accounting and law who owed me favors, provided alibis when he needed to meet with lawyers or financial advisors without his father's knowledge. It was dangerous and exhausting and completely consuming. I was aware that I was compromising my safe, predictable life for someone whose world was the opposite of safe. But watching Marco slowly come alive, seeing him transform from the ghost at the periphery of his father's empire into someone with purpose and hope, made every risk worthwhile. We fell in love somewhere in that process, though neither of us acknowledged it for a long time. It happened in the spaces between conversations about business strategies and exit plans, in the way Marco looked at me when I explained something he did not understand, in the way my heart raced when I saw him enter the library, in the accidental touches that lingered longer than necessary, in the growing awareness that we had become essential to each other in ways that went far beyond friendship. It was 18 months after our first conversation when Marco finally kissed me. We were alone in the library after hours, celebrating a major victory. He had successfully separated a property development company from his father's holdings, establishing it as an independent entity. It was the first concrete step toward his eventual escape. "We should celebrate," I said, pulling out a bottle of wine I had hidden in my office for this moment. "This is huge, Marco. You are really doing it. We are doing it." He took the glass I offered. "None of this would be possible without you, Lily." "You are." He stopped, struggling with words. "You are the reason I believe I can be someone different. The reason I have kept going when everything seemed impossible." I moved closer, emboldened by his vulnerability, and the wine and the moment. "You were always someone different, Marco. I just helped you remember." He set down his glass and cupped my face in his hands. "I am in love with you. I have been for months, and I know I should not be. No, I am putting you in danger just by feeling this. No, you deserve someone whose life is not so complicated. But I cannot seem to stop." "Then do not stop," I whispered, and kissed him. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of us afraid of breaking the spell. Then deeper, more urgent, releasing months of tension and longing and fear. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "This makes everything more complicated," Marco said, his forehead resting against mine. "I know, but I do not care. I love you too. Have loved you probably since that first day when you picked up the Count of Monte Cristo, and I saw someone who understood transformation and reinvention as deeply as I did. What are we going to do? What we have been doing. Take it one day at a time. Make small choices that move us toward the future we want. And believe that somehow, against all odds, we can build something real together." That became our reality for the next year. a secret relationship built in the margins of Marco's dangerous life and my quiet one. We were careful, so careful, never being seen together outside the library, communicating through burner phones, creating elaborate cover stories for our time together, living in constant fear that Vincent would discover us and destroy everything. But we also had moments of profound happiness. Nights in the library after closing, surrounded by books, talking for hours about everything and nothing. Stolen weekends at a cabin Marco rented under a false name, where we could pretend to be a normal couple. Quiet dinners at my apartment, where Marco could shed the weight of his family's expectations and just be himself. Marco continued to build his exit strategy. More businesses separated from his father's empire. Money moved to accounts Vincent could not access. Alliances formed with people who wanted to see legitimate business thrive. It was slow, painstaking work. But Marco was patient, strategic, exactly like the Count of Monte Cristo plotting his revenge and eventual freedom. Everything fell apart on a Tuesday evening, 2.5 years after Marco first walked into the library. I was at home, making dinner, when my door burst open. 3 men in suits, not police, but something worse. Vincent Marchese's people. They did not ask permission, just grabbed me, a hand over my mouth to muffle my scream. "Miss Chen," one of them said, his voice polite but terrifying. "Mr. Marchese would like to speak with you. Please do not make this difficult." They drove me to the Marchese estate, a mansion in the hills that looked like something from a movie. Beautiful and cold and intimidating. Inside, I was led to an office where Vincent Marchese sat behind a massive desk, Marco standing beside him looking pale and frightened. "Miss Chen." Vincent's voice was cultured, almost friendly. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." I sat, my hands gripping the chair arms to stop them from shaking. Marco would not look at me, his eyes fixed on the floor. "My son believes I am unaware of his activities over the past 2 years. Vincent lit a cigar, the smoke curling around his face. "The secret business ventures, the money transfers, the preparations for, what did you call it, Marco? A fourth option?" Marco flinched but said nothing. "He also believes I was unaware of you, Miss Chen." Vincent turned his attention to me, the quiet librarian who has been helping him plot his escape, the woman he thinks he is in love with, the anchor, I believe he called you in one of the phone conversations I have been monitoring. My heart stopped. He knew everything, had known perhaps from the beginning. "Now, I have a decision to make," Vincent continued, as if discussing a business problem rather than lives. "I can eliminate you both. My disappointing son who wants to run away from his responsibilities, and the woman who encouraged him. Clean. Simple. Problem solved." Marco stepped forward. "Father, please. This is not her fault. I came to her. I involved her. If you are going to punish someone, punish me. Just let her go. She has done nothing wrong." "Nothing wrong?" Vincent's voice hardened. "She helped you steal from the family, helped you plot against me, helped you believe you could be something other than what you are. That is betrayal, Marco. And betrayal has consequences. Please. I found my voice. I love him. I was just trying to help someone who was drowning. If that is a crime, then I am guilty. But do not hurt him for wanting a different life." Vincent studied me for a long moment. "Do you understand what you are asking me? To let my son leave? To walk away from the empire my father built, that his father built? To allow the Marchese line to end with me because my son prefers books to business? I am asking you to let your son be happy." I met his gaze, refusing to look away despite my fear. "To give him the choice your family never gave him, to love him enough to let him go. Love." Vincent laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. "You think love matters in my world, Miss Chen? Love is weakness. Love is vulnerability. Love is what gets people killed. Then maybe your world is broken, I said, my fear transforming into anger. Maybe power without love is just another kind of death. Your son is brilliant and kind and capable of extraordinary things, but you are so focused on making him into a copy of yourself that you cannot see who he actually is. And that, Mr. Marchese, that is the real tragedy. The office was silent. Vincent's expression was unreadable. Marco stood frozen, clearly expecting violence to erupt at any moment. I waited, my heart pounding, for whatever judgment Vincent would render. You have courage, Vincent finally said. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. He stood, moving to the window. You remind me of my wife, Marco's mother. She said similar things to me once, about love and choice and seeing people for who they are. I did not listen to her, and she died hating me for it. He turned back to face us. I have been monitoring your activities for 2 years, Marco. Watching you build your exit strategy. Watching you try to become something different. And do you know what I realized? Marco shook his head, unable to speak. That you are better at legitimate business than I ever was at the illegal kind. The companies you separated, the ones you have been running independently, they are thriving, making more money legally than they ever did as fronts. You have a gift, son. One I was too blind to recognize. What are you saying? Marco's voice was barely audible. I am saying I am tired. Vincent sat back down heavily. Tired of the violence, the constant warfare, the knowledge that everything I built will likely crumble when I am gone, because I have no heir capable of maintaining it. He looked at Marco. But maybe I do not need an heir for this empire. Maybe I need a son who can build something better. If you have been enjoying Lily and Marco's story, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel and hit that like button. Your support helps us create more stories like this. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Now let us see how their story concludes. Vincent pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. This contains documentation for everything in the Marchese portfolio that is or can be made legitimate. Properties, businesses, investments. It is yours, Marco. All of it. Build your empire, your way, legal, clean. Everything your mother wanted for you. Marco stared at the folder like it might explode. What is the catch? No catch. Vincent's voice was tired. But conditions. You take the legal businesses and make them succeed. You stay away from the illegal operations entirely. They will be handled by others. And you. He glanced at me. You marry this woman who loves you enough to confront a man she should fear. Give me grandchildren who never know what their grandfather really was. Let the Marchese name mean something other than crime. I looked at Marco, saw the disbelief and hope warring in his expression. This was not the escape we had planned. It was something different, something better. A transformation that kept him connected to his father while allowing him to be himself. Why are you doing this? Marco asked. Because my wife was right. And apparently, so is your librarian. Vincent stood again. Because I watched you for 2 years trying to escape. And what I saw was not weakness but strength. The strength to choose differently. To build rather than destroy. And because... He paused, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. Because you are my son, Marco. And despite everything, I want you to be happy, even if that happiness looks nothing like what I envisioned. Marco moved to the desk, opened the folder, and began reading. His hand shook as he turned pages documenting holdings worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Businesses spanning multiple industries. The foundation for a legitimate empire. There is one more thing, Vincent said, pulling out another document. An envelope with my name on it. For Miss Chen. Consider it a dowry, though I suspect she will object to the term. Enough money to never worry about security again. And, he added with something almost like respect, a donation to the Riverside Library in your name. $3 million. For a woman who understands the power of books, it seemed appropriate. I stared at the envelope, too shocked to speak. "Take it," Vincent said. "You helped my son become someone I can be proud of. That is worth far more than money. But the money is tangible, and in my world, tangible matters." Marco closed the folder and looked at his father. There was a long moment where they simply observed each other, years of conflict and pain and misunderstanding hanging between them. Then Vincent extended his hand. "Build something good, son. Be the man your mother wanted you to be. The man I was too damaged to become." Marco took his father's hand, and something in both their faces shifted. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Perhaps the start of a different relationship, one built on acceptance rather than expectation. Vincent turned to me. "Take care of him, Miss Chen. My son pretends to be strong, but he is softer than he admits. That softness is not weakness, despite what I once believed. It is humanity. Guard it." "I will," I promised. "And thank you. For seeing him. For letting him choose." "I did not let him choose," Vincent corrected. "You did. You broke the silence around him. Saw him when everyone else looked through him. That is a rare gift, Miss Chen. Do not take it lightly." We left the Marchesi estate in Marco's car, both of us silent with shock. It was not until we were miles away that Marco pulled over, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. "Did that really just happen?" He turned to me, his eyes searching. "Is this real?" "I think so." I touched his face gently. "I think you are finally free, Marco. In a way neither of us expected, but free nonetheless." He kissed me then, desperate and grateful and full of emotion. When we broke apart, he was crying. 3 years, he said. 3 years of planning and preparing to run away. And in the end, I did not have to run. I just had to. To what? Wait for my father to have a change of heart? No. You had to become someone worth your father recognizing, someone who could build something legitimate and successful. Someone who proved that being different from him was not the same as being weak. I wiped tears from his face. You did that, Marco. You transformed yourself. Your father just finally noticed. We sat in the car for a long time, processing the evening's revelations and holding each other. Finally, Marco pulled back onto the road. Where are we going? I asked. Home. Your apartment. Our apartment, if you will have me. He glanced at me, vulnerability evident in every line of his face. I know this has all happened fast. No, I am still technically part of a family you have every reason to fear. But Lily, will you? He took a breath. Will you marry me? Build this new life with me. Help me become the person you always believed I could be? Yes, I said without hesitation. Yes to all of it. To marriage and building a life and being whatever you need me to be. But Marco, I added seriously, I was already helping you become who you could be. I was just holding up a mirror. The person you saw, the person you became, that was always you. I just broke the silence long enough for you to remember. He smiled, and it was the smile I had first seen when he talked about the Count of Monte Cristo. The smile of someone who understood transformation and reinvention. You broke the silence, and everything changed. That became the title of the article written about us 3 years later, the business magazine piece about how Marco Marchesi had transformed his family's empire from criminal enterprise to legitimate business success. How a chance meeting with a librarian had changed the trajectory of one of the city's most infamous families. How love and literature had accomplished what law enforcement never could. The article was mostly accurate, though it missed the deeper truth. That transformation is never about one moment or one person. It is about countless small choices made over time. About believing change is possible, even when evidence suggests otherwise. About having the courage to be seen and the strength to stay visible, even when invisibility is safer. Marco and I married 6 months after that night in his father's office. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family. Vincent walked me down the aisle, an irony not lost on anyone present. Brenda was my maid of honor, still slightly terrified of my in-laws, but supportive nonetheless. We built a life together that was both ordinary and extraordinary. Marco threw himself into transforming the legitimate Marchesi businesses, proving his father's faith was not misplaced. Within 5 years, the Marchesi name was associated with successful real estate development and import-export businesses rather than criminal enterprise. Vincent gradually stepped away from his illegal operations, claiming retirement, though everyone knew it was health issues finally catching up with him. I continued working at the library, though I now oversaw the expansion funded by Vincent's donation. The Riverside Library became a resource center for the community, offering job training programs and literacy classes alongside traditional library services. We created a reading room in memory of Marco's mother, filled with the books she had loved. It became Marco's favorite space, the place where he could still be just a man who loved literature, rather than the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. We had 2 children, a daughter, and then a son. We named our daughter Sophia, after Marco's mother. Our son, we named Thomas, after the protagonist of one of my favorite novels, The Movable Feast. Vincent doted on them with a gentleness no one who knew his reputation would believe possible. He taught Sophia to play chess and took Thomas to museums. He was determined that his grandchildren would know him as Nono, grandfather, not as the man he had been. 5 years after that night in Vincent's office, he called us to his home. He looked older, thinner, his famous vitality diminished by illness. Marco and I sat with him in the same office where he had given Marco his freedom. "I need to tell you something," Vincent said, his voice weaker than I had ever heard it. "The doctors say I have months at most. Cancer. Ironic that after surviving decades in a dangerous business, disease is what gets me. Dad." Marco reached for his father's hand. "We will fight this. Best doctors, experimental treatments, whatever it takes. No." Vincent squeezed Marco's hand. "I am tired, son, and I am ready. But before I go, I need to say something." He looked at both of us. "Thank you for giving me these last years, for letting me know my grandchildren, for showing me that the Marchesi name could mean something other than what I made it. I do not deserve the grace you have shown me, but I am grateful for it. You gave us a chance when you could have destroyed us," I said quietly. "That is not nothing, Vincent. I gave you what I should have given Marco years ago. The freedom to choose." His eyes focused on Marco. "Your mother would be proud of who you have become. I only wish I had listened to her sooner, had let you be yourself instead of trying to forge you into my image." "I am proud to be your son," Marco said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not because of what you built, but because in the end, you chose to let me build something different. That took courage, Dad. Real courage." Vincent died 2 months later, surrounded by family. His funeral was attended by hundreds, a mixture of legitimate business associates, family friends, and a few remaining connections to his previous life. The eulogies painted a picture of a complicated man who had lived a dangerous life but tried to do better in his final years. Marco gave the final eulogy, and his words captured something important. "My father was not a perfect man," he said. "He made choices I cannot defend and lived a life I could never condone. But in his final years, he gave me the greatest gift a parent can give a child, the freedom to be myself, the space to choose differently, the courage to build rather than destroy. For that, I will always be grateful." Now, 10 years after I first spoke to a quiet man in the classic literature section of my library, I stand in that same space and marvel at how one conversation changed everything. How breaking the silence around someone everyone ignored led to transformation neither of us could have predicted. Marco is successful beyond anyone's expectations, running a business empire that employs thousands and contributes millions to the community. He still visits the library regularly, still gets lost in books for hours, still looks at me like I am the most important person in his world. Our children are growing up knowing they can choose their own paths. Sophia wants to be an artist like her grandmother. Thomas talks about becoming a teacher. They know their grandfather's history. We have never hidden it. But they also know he changed. That people can transform. That redemption, however imperfect, is possible. I still work at the library, though now I run programs specifically designed to help people who feel invisible. Former foster youth, kids from difficult backgrounds, anyone who needs to be reminded that they matter, that they are seen, that their story does not have to be defined by where they started. People sometimes ask me if I regret getting involved with Marco, if I wish I had maintained my safe, quiet life instead of entangling myself with a mobster's son. The answer is always the same. No. Never. Because that safe, quiet life was also a lonely one. A half-life built on the fear that being truly seen meant being vulnerable. Marco taught me that vulnerability is not weakness, that being seen, truly seen, is worth the risk. That transformation requires courage, but creates possibilities we cannot imagine when we are hiding. And I taught Marco something equally important, that he was never invisible, never unworthy, never the disappointing son his father once claimed he was. He was always someone capable of extraordinary things. He just needed someone to break the silence long enough to remind him. That is what love does, I think. It breaks the silence around us, sees us when we feel invisible, reminds us of possibilities we have forgotten, gives us the courage to transform into who we were always meant to be. My name is Lily Chen Marchesi. I saw everyone ignore the quiet son of a mafia boss, and I broke the silence. Not with grand gestures or heroic actions, but with something simpler. Recognition, conversation, books, belief that he could be more than what others saw. And in return, Marco broke the silence around me. Saw the lonely girl hiding behind library stacks and professional competence. Reminded me that I could be more than safe and invisible, that I could be loved, chosen, essential to someone's world. We saved each other, I think. Not from physical danger, though there was that too, but from the more insidious danger of living half-lives, of being present but not truly alive, of existing in the silence that surrounds people when no one sees them as fully human. So if there is a lesson in our story, it is this. See people. Really see them. Break the silence around those who have been ignored or dismissed or overlooked. You never know what transformation might result from one conversation, one moment of recognition, one person brave enough to say, I see you. You matter. You can be more than what others say you are. That is what changed everything for us. Not money or power or dramatic escapes. Just two people seeing each other clearly and believing that transformation was possible. Everything else followed from that simple, revolutionary act of breaking the silence. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Lily and Marco's story. If their tale touched your heart, please share it with others. Stories of transformation, of seeing and being seen, of choosing differently. These stories matter. They remind us that we are never truly trapped by our circumstances, that redemption and change are always possible, that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply acknowledge someone else's humanity. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing in the power of stories to change how we see the world and each other.